name is Debbie Gilbert. I'm Vice President of the Elizabeth Township Historical Society, and it's my pleasure to be here at the Coates House, which is the museum and library and headquarters for the Historical Society, to pay honor and tribute and to acknowledge the commitment to the Historical Society and history that Norma Werner has done through a lifetime of loving history and loving heritage and her family. One of the key aspects of Norma to show her commitment to history is the vintage clothing collection that she started in 1976 at the celebration of the Bicentennial. She created the idea of let's do a fashion show and show history through women and children and men parading in outfits that reflect the history of this area in southwestern Pennsylvania. And with the beginning of the fashion show, which was a fundraiser for the Bicentennial Committee, and through the efforts of all of those who were volunteers as part of the Bicentennial Committee, those women and men then started the Elizabeth Township Historical Society and received their charter, I think, in December of 1976. They were a tremendous group of people that had the energy and used the skills of a lifetime to offer to the community a look back and appreciation for the early life in Elizabeth Township and surrounding areas. Norma's interest with the fashion show continued, and she began to collect clothing that now spans about 100 years. Our earliest piece of clothing dates back to about 1890. We do have some bonnets that might predate that. And you really have to have an appreciation for the quality of the clothing at that time that was preserved and passed on through the generations. Here you have a Sunday coat with fine lace and fine embroidery work. And this would be a Sunday dress that reflects about the 1900s with perhaps the mutton sleeves. Interestingly, this is several layers of clothing that overlaps, and each layer is connected with about 30 hook and eyes. And you can see why sometimes it was good to have a bunch of sisters, because you would need a lot of help just to get dressed for a special activity on Sunday morning. The hat reflects the time when exotic bird feathers were used as decoration. In fact, so many feathers were used through the United Kingdom, Great Britain, and the United States, that's when they started to protect migratory birds, because they were using so much for the hat industry, and the feathers were then, and the birds were beginning to be protected. So you get so many different aspects of history just through the clothing. Again, for example, the tiny, tiny waist on this black dress. This would have been worn with a corset, which restricted the movement of women, as even the health of women, with confining their breathing and causing maybe often to faint or to have indigestion. But again, health issues that came up. And at the late into the 20th century, that's when the again, women's health became a social issue. And again, in telling the story of the clothing, we are allowed to look at that part of women's lives and how they changed at that critical time. This, again, going up through the time period, is a fan dress. This dress was featured in Good Housekeeping magazine in the late 1920s. Again, the detail and this craftsmanship and the quality of the material and how they were able to pull an outfit together. Again, these are tiny, tiny little ripples tucked together. Now, in looking at this, this is where you also appreciate Norma's commitment not to only collecting the clothing, but also preserving the clothing. She is a skilled seamstress herself. So she made many of the costumes that were created for the Bicentennial celebration and then used throughout the different activities that the Historical Society held, featuring the vintage clothing that she had. She also used these skills to mend and to sew. The material is so delicate now that when we do presentations, we no longer use models because we want to protect the clothing. But the early shows that Norma did, she would actually use models from the Historical Society, and when she gave them to women's clubs or church groups, she would recruit members of those groups to wear the clothing. Since that time, the clothing has gotten more delicate, while the girls and women, their bone structure has changed, and they just don't fit into many of the costumes with broader shoulders and wider waist and hips. And so that's why we are using mannequins now to display the costumes for different events. This was a find in a bag of clothing, and thank goodness Norma had an eagle eye. One of the major fundraisers throughout the summer are flea markets that the Historical Society. Again, in a bag, she pulled this canvas purse out with the wooden handles, and inside is a tag that indicates it was made by a woman during the Depression, and she was subsidized with salary from the Franklin Roosevelt social agencies at that time. Next comes a major period in history, World War II. Norma's husband, Al, served in the Army Air Corps, and he flew over Germany and delivered relief to Belgium. Al passed away about a year ago, but prior to that, Al was still able to fit into his Army Corps uniform, and of course Norma recruited him to model at one of the last shows that we did in a local restaurant here. As far as the connection and the love story of Al and Norma, that's reflected in her bridal dress here. Again, he was served in the Army Air Corps, and when she made her dress, again as that seamstress, she used the nylon that was typical of parachutes during World War II. And you can see she has the little mitten gloves that goes with it with great detail, and the little overskirt in a lace pattern. Again, the talent of Norma. In the background is the suit that Al actually wore in his wedding when he returned from World War II. There were so many marriages at that time that a lot of the ceremonies, the groom wore their military uniform. During World War II, with the number of Americans serving in Great Britain prior to D-Day, Eleanor Roosevelt actually did a collection of wedding gowns so that they could be sent over so that the girls could be in a proper attire. Again, lace was often used, and lace curtains were sent to Southeast Asia for mosquito netting, and it just shows the restrictions on supplies and materials. Coming out of World War II, Christian Dior in 1949 felt the freedom and the supply for material and garments when all of the limitations and restrictions were lifted, and that's reflected in the dress next to her, the Al's wedding attire. That dress we call, or Norma calls, Mrs. Cleaver's dress. And that's why, again, the show Leave It to Beaver, and we put a string of pearls because Beaver's mom always wore pearls. But again, it's the tightened waistline and the full skirt, and those full skirts that you'll often see in the movies, as in Rear Window with Princess Grace Kelly wearing, and some of the other fuller skirts that came out in the early movies in the 50s. Again, people wanted to celebrate, and they often modeled their attire after the movie stars. Even during the Depression, women may be poor, but they didn't want to look poor. And so that's why you would have the fox little collars or the little mink wraps that people would throw around their necks to just enjoy one of the pleasures in their life that they had. That was a treat. But again, this reflects the 50s, and again, the hat that you see. family was big, as you know, the baby boomers hit, and Norma was a Cub Scout leader. And again, her involvement in the community. But she used history and she used nature. And she would take the kids out into the woods and show what was growing wild and in the woods in the family farm, which dates back to Revolutionary times. And Norma still lives on a parcel of that farm. In talking about Norma's life and experience on the farm, we refer to these overalls and shirt. During World War II, Norma worked the farm. The men in the farm went to war. Her sister went to work in the factory, but Norma had the responsibility of taking care of the farm animals as well as tending to the fields. And these are the overalls that Norma wore during that time. The hat reflects, I don't know, going back to the mid-19th century, but I remember seeing my grandmother in the 1950s wearing a bonnet like that to protect her face from the sun. Again, each piece of clothing, no matter how small, tells a story, and it's that historical vantage point that we have to give Norma credit, because she saw the value in even a hat, a pair of gloves, a purse. And for that, we're grateful for Norma's contribution. This again in talking about Grandma. Again in the 1950s, Grandma wore black heavy shoes and she always had an apron on and a work dress. And Norma came up with the idea when we were doing fashion shows always to put a handkerchief in the pocket, because as Grandma, there was always a runny nose that would need attention. We've also looked at the history of aprons, as far as women using them to go and collect eggs from the hen house, to wipe away tears, to use them as a hot pad, to take hot items off of the stove. Again, look at the clothing. It's utilitarian, and it's also gives women, tells their story through different items, how they used. Not just the fancy clothes that celebrated on Sunday, but their working clothes. This is a little blue hat that's kind of reminiscent of, again, when Mamie Eisenhower was the first lady. Mamie was a very practical woman, and she was proud that she could order her hats from Sears. She also, again, had the role of wife, and people would ask her, Mamie, what is your job? She would say, well, Ike runs the country, and I turn the pork chops. So even the story of a hat, you can tell the local history of people, but you can also broaden it to national and international. For example, the wedding dress that is very similar to the nylon that was used in parachutes. Parachutes during the bombing of Great Britain, they were valuable. You could use that material. And some people were lucky enough to get that parachute, but most of the parachutes were actually confiscated. The quality of the American parachutes were much better because the American parachutes used fewer seams. Again, you're looking at patterns. Norma was a sewer and a seamstress, and she made so many of the costumes that were used in the Bicentennial celebration. But she was also gifted that she would be challenged by an original piece of clothing. For example, she made a suit with I would say a 1910 outfit that had a pedal skirt, as she called it, and it had 17 different panels that started from the very narrow waistline and then expanded into a full skirt with a small train. She decorated it with her embroidery skills, and there have to be 1,000 French knots. I appreciate those French knots because when my mother taught me to embroider, I learned the French knot and quit after making about 5. Again, Norma enjoyed the challenge. She collected patterns from the UK to make sure her clothing was authentic, as well as copying original pieces that were found through donations. Again, there was only one piece of clothing that was purchased at an auction, and it's that little coat over there that Norma requested that somebody go and buy. She's found them in garbage bags and through the flea markets and through family members. And again, she's a Renaissance woman. She sees the value and she uses her skills as a storyteller, as a seamstress, and just the gifts that she has learned, that the skills acquired as an early American woman, she has shared with children and through adults through her work. Once again, I'm Debbie Pop Gilbert with the Elizabeth Township Historical Society, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to have learned from Norma and to appreciate her ability to study the clothing, as well as to study patterns, as well as to look through books and to learn about men, women, and children's clothing in history, so that this history of these individuals can be carried on the local level and beyond. Again, thank you to Norma, and thank you for this opportunity to share her story. Norma, you're a joy, an absolute joy. You bring history alive with your enthusiasm and your experience. You just have, your whole life has been showing lessons of how to be a sustainable lifestyle. It's a catchword now, but it's the way you've lived. And that's a major lesson that we can learn. As you grew up on the farm, there was no waste. And as you work around this historical society, you see no waste. You see opportunities to use material, to use tables and chairs, and to use your ideas to do fundraisings and realizing what people like. And through your joy of history, you just share experiences and are very willing to be open to new ideas and to try something. It's just not what you want to do. Hey, let's give it a go and we'll try it. And if it succeeds, great. If it doesn't, don't do it again. Norma, it's been an honor and privilege to learn from you and to work with you. I just wish I had all the talents and skills that you have to continue to preserve and encourage and present these vintage fashions that you've collected through the years that you've given through history to the Historical Society and the DAR and your organizations. Again, thank you, Norma.
Hi, Norma. I just want to say thank you for everything that you do to help us out. You pitch in here at the Historical Society. You teach me so much about history, and you share your wealth of knowledge with everyone, with students, with people. You've helped us out at the flea markets. When we plan anything, you're there ready to pitch in, and I really appreciate it.
And I'm so glad that you invited me to join the Historical Society. I've had very nearly 20 years of doing historic endeavors, going with you to schools to do presentations for school kids, and just the things you've taught me about the American's Creed and the original American History Month and all the things I learned. So I'm glad to have been able to have these experiences, and you imparted that little bit of your own historic knowledge to me, and I'm grateful for that.
Norma had a great deal to do with meeting the Bicentennial Wagon Train, 1976, that came across the country, and when she came to meet them, and she helped to get them to come to Round Hill Park, and we have a map of how they had the wagon trains in this area. So she was influential with welcoming them to this area. Norma contributed to compiling the Between Two Rivers book. It tells about the Elizabeth Township area, tells about churches, schools, and houses, and there's maps showing this area, our neighbors in Elizabeth, Sutersville. So that's all part of Norma's contribution to the local history.
There were all sorts of activities over the years, and these scrapbooks show some things like the colonial routes with the food from the 1700s and the performers playing colonial era music and showing dancing. The parades they had with the floats. The guys dressed up as buckskinners, and the 1776 Pioneer homestead that they had on the floats. And then other fundraisers, such as making funnel cakes, that she started that for the Bicentennial Committee and continued it for the Historical Society. And she was on the ground floor, literally, when the Historical Society got the first Sandmeyer house. There she is with the potbelly stove that was donated to the Sandmeyer house to be the first headquarters for the Historical Society that unfortunately burned by the arsonist. But she then continued raising money and enabled the Historical Society to get our current home, the Coates House, in 1986. I've been a member here since 2002. I started here as an internship for graduate school, and it was the first time I came here that I met the lady Norma Werner that does the clothing collection. She got me actually signed up to become an active volunteer at the Historical Society, and it was in that first year that I joined on to the planning committee for the Lewis and Clark Bicentennial. As many people may well know, the Lewis and Clark expedition in 1803 started in Elizabeth, Pennsylvania. And so we went to meetings, and she actually, as she puts it, stole the Lewis and Clark Bicentennial from Pittsburgh for Elizabeth, just like she did for the Bicentennial Wagon Train in 1976. I ended up getting clothing and accoutrements and actually going on that Bicentennial reenactment myself, traveling on the keel boat on the rivers, horses and mules across the Bitterroot Mountains, and dugout canoes down the Clearwater, Snake, and Columbia rivers to the Pacific Ocean. While I was on there, I kind of became adept at demonstrating the medical kit of Lewis and Clark. That's what I have here. It has all the various medicines, such things as Dr. Rush's bilious pills made by Dr. Benjamin Rush, the most prominent physician in the country at the time, to natural Indian remedies like rattlesnake rattles for childbirth, and tools and equipment like the fleams that they would use for bloodletting along with the bleeding bowl. When George Washington was sick before he died, they treated him by bleeding him a pint of blood an hour for 11 hours, but he still died. Then another one of the things that really scares the pants off people is the tooth key. Back then they didn't have dental drills, so if you had a cavity, you'd have to have the tooth out. So what they would do, they would hook this over your tooth and twist it, and the hook would break through your gum and your jawbone to twist out the tooth from underneath the root. And so all of this Lewis and Clark medicine and all the various things, it all ties into Elizabeth Township history going back to the original Bicentennial Committee from 1975 and 1976.
My cousin's, Miss Al's cousin's wife, she's a humdinger, and she's bright as all heck, and she knows everything. And so what happened with the wagon train, we went down when that first started, and they had a big parade in Pittsburgh to start it off. they had all the people around, and they brought all the kids to their bands from their thing. They didn't have one thing about old. Not one thing there. But we did. We went down, and my cousin had gotten an old log cabin, and the township put it on a big truck, and we all got dressed, and we went down, and we had the tail end of the parade, and we was cooking hot dogs on a charcoal burner and everything. And so we was the last one, and this guy came up the street. He said, you had the best thing in the whole parade, because it was the only old thing that was in the parade, and all the people in costumes and everything.
And what were you celebrating?
That was
explain the Bicentennial.
That was the ones that they went out west with,
So 1976, it was the
yeah,
200
yes, yeah.
Bicentennial of the 1776.
76 one, yeah.
Okay.
And that was the start of all this stuff. So anyhow, they had a 2-week layover that they had to do in order to they had to be in Philadelphia on the 4th of July. And so they had a 2-week, they had no place to put them. Well, Pittsburgh said, well, they could take 4 of them. What are you gonna do with the
Four
rest
wagon
of them?
trains.
We have a whole county park out here with nothing in it but grass for the horses, places to put everybody, water, all kinds of things up there.
That
and
was
a
Round
brand
Hill
new
Park?
Round Hill Park. So my cousin, she said to me, let's go down and talk to that guy, because I had talked to him when he was there, and he gave us a card, where he was and everything. So, okay, I said, let's go down there. Well, we go down there, and she's a corker. Can't find a place to park. So we're running around, and I said, oh, there's a parking spot. We're in the middle of the street. She takes a U-turn right in the middle of the street. So, okay, we lived through that one. We got this guy, and he was all for doing this. So he orchestrated this
With your Bicentennial team here.
with the people that was coming up the river on the boats. They had all them barges coming up with all that stuff on it. Well, he was the one who got with them, and they came up past the Pittsburgh and just kept on going. Because Pittsburgh thought they were going to stop there. No, they just keep on coming up the river and coming up the river and coming up the river. Till finally they come up here, and these people, they're on what the hell do they think they're doing? Well, we have pictures. You see the one down in the Historical Society? When big
Where you greeted them?
Yeah, where you're getting off things. Well, that's because we stole the thing and put it up there. And that's who's getting it off of there. So we put it up at the park then. And they had their 2 weeks up there at the park that they had to stay. And then
Now that was the Wagoneers, the people who were riding the wagons.
Had the wagons and all the people
that walked along.
Everybody was up here then, all ready to go, but they stayed up here for the 2 weeks.
Did you feed them? Is that part of what you were doing?
They went and got their own food.
Okay.
Because they could go with their own food and get stuff. But we had all kinds of things up there while they were here. We had
For the public?
For the public to come up. The public come up and see. And we had a program over at the high school where the Indians came, and they did all kinds of things over there at the high school. They could all sit down and have big things. We spent then 2 weeks entertaining these guys.
One of the things we saw down there were multiple different tickets and programs of all the fundraising you did to raise the money to be able to support this Bicentennial.
Oh, I've made so many funnel cakes. I had my own recipe for funnel cakes, and somebody wanted to buy it. I said, nope, I don't sell my recipe for funnel cakes.
The other thing that we saw was interesting. There's a photograph on the wall. You did a fashion show, I think your first fashion show, to raise money for this Bicentennial.
Yeah, I did that. I did all this stuff. But anyhow, this was so cute up there. But while we're up there, the story goes, I think there's a picture in there somewhere. But then, I know it's in some of the other books. There was this old guy, and he's like 90 years old, and he's from Alaska. And he had an Alaska wagon and I think the Idaho one. He had 2 of them. He had one guy. So I go up there, and I'm kind of well, we should go up there every day and see everything's going all right, because I live closest. And so I go up there, and they're shoeing the horses. And this old guy's sitting there, and I have my Bicentennial. I put my shirt over there. It has 1776 and 1976. This old guy looks at me and he says, "Tell me, honey," he says, "what's the difference between the 1776 and the 1970?" I says, "Oh, hell, it don't matter. They're dry anyhow." He never got that.
He never got what you were saying? So.
Well, when we go on the wagon train, we went on the wagon train. And we got up there the first night we camped out. It rained. And so some little girl came up, and she had a little baby like this and a kid about 2 or 3 years old, wanted to see the wagons. I said, "Could you let me have that baby? I'll hold the baby, and you take the kid around and do whatever you want." Okay, she handed me the kid, so I went over to him. What the hell was his name? And I said to him, "Look what happened to me last night when I got wet." By nightfall, that went all through the whole camp and came back to me.
You were entertainment as well.
Oh, entertainment. That old guy, he was great. He was great.
Norma, you've been a part of so many things in the history of Elizabeth Township. Your whole life, you've
My whole
been...
life. My whole life. Like Ed said to me down there, he told me something that I hadn't even remembered. Was when our school superintendent wanted to, he was wanting to retire, but they wasn't going to give him no benefits. And he was old. He was a lovely old guy with white hair, Mr. Montgomery. Well, that didn't suit us kids. You see, I went to a one-room schoolhouse. When I started school, I was in first grade, and my brother was in 7th grade, but there were 16 kids, and we were all different grades. And this guy taught us, we had a teacher, but this guy was our principal. And then they closed the schoolhouse down, and that's why Round Hill Park was up there. That was part of the schoolhouse. And so anyhow...
So they weren't going to pay his pension.
So
what did you kids decide?
They were going to just throw him out to do what the hell he can do. And the kid says, "We're not going to do that." So I forgot all about this. We went on strike. We wouldn't go to school.
That was in 1937.
Somewhere about there. Yeah. Ed just reminded me. I said, "Oh, yeah, I forgot all about that."
And you climbed out a window, locked all the doors, and climbed out a window.
Oh, we did all that kind of stuff.
And they paid his pension.
But finally, because it just got so bad that we just said we're not going to have that, then they did give the guy his pension.
So you've been an activist pretty much your whole life.
Since first grade.
Since first grade.
First grade.
Some of the other things so we've talked about your childhood history with Elizabeth Township, but we haven't talked about this property that you live on that really has been part of your interest in history your whole life.
The whole life.
You live right here on the Revolutionary War property.
Yes,
Tell
yes.
us about it.
Well, Grandpap was, this property was, it was, let's see, they had a whole big piece here because it was spread out because of
The original 218 acres.
Yeah, it was split up because it was split up among the brothers and sisters and that. So my part that my mother got was 56 acres of it. And then the Howell kids got across the road, part of on the other side of the road because the road wasn't there then. And they got that part over there. And then there wasn't all these neighbors out here then. It was just open property most up here. So, but the Pierces owned a lot of it, and the Douglases owned a lot of it, and they were all family. They all married each other back and forth. So I said, "Boy, they come to look at that thing on the map." I said, we did own all of Elizabeth Township because it was different parts of the family owned stuff. That they had big farms. And I just did a thing for up at church. And the guy said, the preacher said to me up there, he said, what kind of clothes did they wear way back there? I says, well, I can show you. I got all that, so I can show you. So one of the girls, she said, well, we're going to do a luncheon up there. And I said, okay. She said, you want you talking to her? I said, no, I don't know nothing about the church. I don't know nothing about what preacher did this and what preachers did that, because they had a cousin of mine that did that. And he died. And then another friend, she took it, and she did that part of it. We had.
Are you talking about the history of Round Hill Presbyterian Church?
But then the Presbytery had their big thing out here, and they had all the people from Pittsburgh and everything come out here, and the church was packed. I had to do the cemetery. I said, I don't know nothing about the church, but I will do the cemetery. So when it came time that, I took these people for a walk. And we go down over the hill, and I show them, this is my grandmother, and this is my grandbrother, and this is my uncle here, and this is my family over here, and this goat over here is here, and this is my other grandma down here. And we walked up over the hill, and the guy said, well, that was very, very interesting. I didn't know who he was. Didn't mean nothing to me, just got along with us. And he kept talking to me about it, and I just got a letter from him that I just found here the other day. He was one of the head of the presbyteries down there. That I didn't know who he was, but he bought, when we was doing our book at the time, he bought one of my books. And so he wrote me a letter, a thank you letter, for that wonderful trip through the cemetery, and told them about all this stuff and about how my family owned all the cemetery. They owned all of Round Hill Park. They owned all this. That's all was my family.
And your family donated that, where they built the original church.
Well, he donated. He donated a piece up there, and what happened was, you have to go back in history when it was all just open land, and Mr. Wyckoff, which was another grandparent, that Wyckoff's owned down there, and my Pierce family was up in above Uniontown. Up in there. And they built the first Presbyterian church over there. As my grandfather built that. And the neat thing about that, my niece became a minister. Her first church was her grandpa's church.
That's Alida.
Yeah, Alida. Was her first church, was his church. Well, Mr. Wyckoff sent how he got him up to him, get down here, because the government was going to give land from the Mon River to the York River. And you could come down and get free land. But then you got like 300 acres. And so he said, get your family down here. So they came down, and sure enough, Andrew got the part over on the Mon River. Elisha got the part where we're in here, and Jim got the part down at the York River. And the part that Jim got down there was where my grandfather Howell bought the property off a land speculator, got it off of there, and he bought the property over there where Tasty Freeze is.
Yes, in Suterville.
Yeah, good, Tasty Freeze, and the Douglas Station.
On the bike trail.
Yeah, So that's where my grandfather and them all came from. Down there was his father and them lived down there, and then Grandpap then got grown up and bought a piece out here. Bought this piece out here.
And is that your patriot from the Revolutionary War? Philip?
Yeah.
Colonel Philip Howell.
Colonel Philip Howell. And then my grandfather on my dad's time was also in the Revolutionary War. But I don't have him documented.
Okay.
But they were
That's
both
the Wolfe
the
line.
Wolfe guy. My grandpa Wolfe was also in the Revolutionary War. But I didn't go in a DER on him. I just went in on Philip, because it cost you so damn much money to do that. And I said,
Well, tell me a little bit about how then this monument came to be at the end of your drive that says Wolfe and Howell. It has both of those names on the monument.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Now that was my cousin lives in this big house that owns this property here. He and I was raised together because they lived in the same house, my mother's house, but they lived in it when we was kids. So we was like brother and sister, because the rest of us, the kids was older, and they didn't want to do with these little kids. So Herb and I was brother and sister until the day he died. So he got this thing going here one day. We were talking, and he said, you know, if something happens to me and you, nobody's going to know nothing about this. Nobody's going to care or know nothing about this. So we got our heads together, and he runs the monument place down here. He says, and then what we had was the original stone that's in the middle of that with the initials carved in it. That was carved in by Colonel Philip Hull.
And it says 1812 on it.
Yeah. Now that's when he built the house over there. Now they made all the bricks over there in that field. And they sold the bricks to make the houses down in Elizabeth. Him and the guy who,
So they had a little brick enterprise going on at the time.
Yeah, they had a little brick enterprise going on, and they made the bricks. So those are the bricks that are around up there, and the stone is the original brick. And the house up there where the doctor's office is the original brick. Because we took our pony and had a cart, brought them all up there, and they built another house out of the old brick. And then when the kids when they all died, then the kids sold it off.
So in order to memorialize the history of this property,
Mm-hmm.
you and your cousin got together.
Mm-hmm.
And what year was that when you built that monument and had that celebration?
1796, it was 200th anniversary.
So it was in 1996 then that you...
Yeah,
So who
yeah.
came? Who came to this celebration?
About 250 people from all over the United States. And I don't know to this day how they found out we was writing a book. But, because Janice and I, now this is the good part. You talk about divine. I didn't know how to write a book. She didn't know how to write a book. We didn't have a computer. And so I started digging this stuff up, pencil writing. And my niece finally got a new computer. And I'm telling you, this was an old one. It's a little old thing. Never seen one before. We didn't know how to write. She messed up there until she figured out how to do that. And we go up at nighttime. I would get the kids things done, and I'd get 9 o'clock. I'd go out and go up there, and she'd have her kids.
How long did it take you to do that, working on that book?
Oh, about a year.
Okay.
About a year or better.
How many pages are in that book?
500 and some.
500.
It's late over there.
So all the people from, a lot of the people who found out about this came to your celebration?
Here's which, you know, God moves in funny ways. And I can't figure out yet how these people found out about it. Went out of state. We never heard of them. We didn't even know who they were. And they come putting their in, because what had happened when this family of Howells split up and kids went this way and that went that way, then they all found out, and I don't know to this day how they found out about it, but this guy, he sent us a letter. He says, you got this part all wrong. He says, I have it, and he corrected all of that part, and he gave us the cemetery things and the whole family list down there. A girl came up here from Texas, and she's from a big ranch down there, in a big ranch. She come up with her section of it, and 6 months after she was here, she got killed in an automobile accident. We was going to have it. Then we had people come in from Arizona, and I got pictures of them here. And I looked at them, and the kid looked just like one of the kids here. And I said, well, I know you're part of the family. You just look like this other kid. You couldn't tell you apart.
So each of these people contributed to this final book.
Final book. Some came down from Michigan and sent their stuff in. And I can't yet figure out how all these people found out that we was doing a damn book.
So how did you end up determining to make this one special day that everyone would come? Because I understand you had politicians and everybody here.
Oh, yeah. I got a state thing. I wanted to show it to you from the state that's a legal monument. And
you mean a historical marker?
Mm-hmm. It's a historical monument. It just so happened that things just kept going, and everybody said, oh, I want to be in that book. I want to be in that book. And people... they came out of the woodwork, and they all had their proper things that we could fit
to
it
contribute to your book.
in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it just came up. People I had no idea. I had people here in Elizabeth Township I had no idea was related to. They all had the proper stuff to do it. So that book ended up with 500 and some pages. It was going to be a little thing like this, but it ended up a big thing like this. And it's a wonderful book. And the format that she picked, Janice. That's why I said if somebody wants to do something about a book, Janice's name has to go on it because she did the actual work. I did a lot of the stuff, and you know how many cemeteries we photographed tombstones. We look around and photograph, and we had to laugh because we'd take them to the drugstore. These people, here they come again with another batch of them tombstones. That's how we got who was dead and buried and how those things.
Well, you ended up honoring 200 years of Colonel Philip Howe, and you still live on the property
Yes,
of your Revolutionary War
It's
ancestor.
never been sold. We never sold ours. And this
Does anybody outside your family ever live on this ground?
No, not in this ground. Not on ours.
What? So continuous
This
family
yeah,
for 200 years.
yeah.
You know that in 2026 we'll be celebrating the 250 America Project with the DAR. 250 years of American history.
See?
Yeah.
So,
Hey, Norma, here's your mail.
all right. That's my niece. That's the minister. She's taking my mail alert.
She didn't stop in.
Well, she sometimes does, but sometimes she don't too. So she's busy. She has 4 churches, and she's head of the Presbytery, and she got to drive up to up to Hackins and places. Up the river a good bit.
No, Alita's the one.
That's Alita.
Her house is the one that burned down when you were working on my application for the
Yeah.
Daughters of the American
Yeah.
Revolution.
You ought to see it fixed now. She's put it back, and she put it back to 1870.
Did she?
She.
Is it log again?
Uh-huh.
She got the log home? Is it a log home?
No. It was the houses down there, and I had just taken her.
Gotcha.
She restored the house, and put it back because they wanted to put the modern. Oh no. It's 1870, and that's what it's going back to. And they tried to change the ceilings. They had to tear that back out. No, that's not the way it was. You put it back the way.
She's as much a historian as you.
She had restoration insurance. Thank God for that, because they had to put it back the way it was.
Wow. That was a good thing for for the history of this property and for the protection and preservation.
Yes.
Yes. So I have some other things that I can ask you about too. I know that you participated in another book over there called Between Two Rivers.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You and a team of people from what, the Elizabeth Historical Society?
Historical Society. And that was another thing. When we got done doing one thing, we decided we had so much fun up there with we just keep on going. So
the Bicentennial is what led to the Elizabeth Township Historical Society.
Yeah. We started that in one of the girls' living rooms up there, and me and Al and her son, and her son and I are the only 2 left living. And he's a history major, and that's what he's a college history teacher.
I understand then that there's only 3 charter members left then for the Historical Society.
Yeah.
You and Miles, and there's another
I don't know who
person, but there's 3 charter members left, and you're one of them.
Yeah. We're
How old are you now?
91.
91 years
I'll
old
be,
and
if I
still
live
going.
another 3 or 4 months, I'll be 92. So.
You are definitely an indomitable spirit.
Well, I guess I've been rotten all my life.
Is that what it takes? Okay.
But
Tell me something about. I know you're a fighter. I've never heard you say anything negative. You are always looking for opportunities to turn everything into something better.
Well, that's what the world's about. If you can't make it better, why bother? If you're going to make it worse, why bother? Make it better or don't even bother at all. So that's what I've always done. And I thought You know, we had the Historical Society started, and we bought an old house down there. And while we were up the meeting at the fire hall, the fire whistle went off. It was the Green Oak Fire Hall. And we looked out, and the place was flaming, and they burned it down. Somebody, we
It
never
was
did
arson.
find out how to do. So
Yeah.
then we were out of place. So Ron has been wonderful working in the powers that be has been wonderful, that got us enough money to buy the other house. Now, the best part of that is that's my relative's house.
Another tie to Elizabeth.
Another side of Elizabeth, another side of my family, that's their house. And that's what I told them down there. And that big Betsy, I think where we have the meetings down there, the Betsy shop that's down there
Yes.
across the bridge.
Mhm.
That was my family's house. That was all that.
The little diner antique store across the street there
Yeah.
at the Boston Bridge.
Yeah.
And that also was family property.
Oh yes, all that was family property.
You're probably not exaggerating when you say your family had their hands pretty much on all of Elizabeth Township
Just about.
at one time or another.
But one time or other, we had a piece of something in it here, there, and everywhere because different sides of the family, but still all related.
Well, now tell us a little something about what you're wearing.
Oh, this is just an old thing. I thought, well, hey, that's just right for them today because this is from like the 60s or 70s somewhere, and I had it hanging up there. I still got clothes here that they haven't got room to put them. So I have them upstairs there, and I thought, I'll just see if that thing fits yet.
You know, one of the things I really was interested in down there was just a simple pair of overalls, your farm girl outfit.
Oh, God, yes, I wore them all during World War II. They were called farmettes or something like that. And girls had to do all the work because the guys were gone. And we had what they called victory farms, and we do them little shows for little half-hour shows. We go into what a victory garden was, because kids don't know what a victory garden was and don't know anything about that.
We were so proud last year for our Daughters of the American Revolution that we, under conservation, had victory gardens and pollinator gardens during this pandemic. And just like what you and the ladies of the DAR for all these years have been teaching, and tell me how long you've been in the Daughters of the American Revolution.
Ooh,
I know the number. See if you know.
I don't know.
48 years.
40. It's been that long?
Yeah, it's
It's
been
been that long. I didn't remember. I didn't remember.
Oh,
It's
48 years.
Yes.
You got a couple more. You're going to hit a half a century.
I'll be darned if I make it that long.
So some of the things that I heard about, like as far as your farming goes, this was a little story Ed said. He said, tell me about sticking the pig.
Oh, what?
Sticking the pig that broke loose.
Oh, I've done that before. I always tell, don't you argue with me, brother, because I know how to do that.
So because you had to be a farm girl,
all my
you
life.
had to get the chickens ready for the pot. You had to take care of the.
All my life I've been farm growing, and they had 1 acre ground here, and it's funny because we had 4 pigs, we had 4 or 5 goats, we had 2 steers, and one of the best things I had here is, well, it's a couple of good things on these pigs. They had names. And one goes, I called her Grandma because she talked all the time. and she told stories on the rest of them. If they did something bad, she came and showed me what they did bad. And they weren't supposed to be doing that. But okay, so I trust Grandma. So one day they got loose, and she was by herself by then. And I had 2 big steers. She goes into the steer pen, and I thought, they're going to kill her. My God, they're huge, you know. She's a big pig, couple 100-pound pig, but she came out of there, and I was just, she chased the steers. And the steers would come back and try to butt her, but she had enough fat in her head. She didn't care how they buttered. She'd bite them on the heel. And I had my niece come, and I said, come down here because I got to get her. I'm afraid she's going to put the steers through the fence. So she came down and got the steers down in this corner, and Grandma and me walked. I called her grandmother. We walked all the way to the fence and all the way back, and she told me all the stories about what they did. And I walked her up and into her pen.
So it was only a couple of years ago I called you, talking to you, and you were out gardening in your yard that very day. You're 91, about to be 92, and
Yeah.
you're still out there gardening.
Well, I told David that I wanted him to put, because he took over. He took over where my garden was. I had a nice one where that garage is. They took my things and they took all my berries out. I only have my one pan of berries because I had red raspberries and black raspberries. And I used to sell them at a farm thing in McKeesport. But they took all them out and built a garage on it. So I said, well, and my barn, they tore down my barn that I had all my animals in up there, and they tore down, gave my goat shed to the neighbor over here for a dog.
Well, one of the nice things that Debbie said about you was that, you took all these skills that you learned, that you lived through, the Depression, the World War, you've been using these skills all your life, and she said you've been teaching them to other people.
Yeah, I've tried to teach, because I said the kids, now, it's coming. I can see it coming. We're going to get back to what we were. And God help us if you don't know how to make a fire. And the worst thing I can think is when they got rid of the scouts. Because the scouts took kids out into the woods and taught them how to live off the ground and how to do this and how to do that. And boys and Girl Scouts.
I heard you did that. You were a leader, a scout leader.
No, I used to do things for them, but I was never a leader.
So a teacher.
Now my daughter-in-law was a scout leader. She was a scout leader for a long time until they disbanded the Girl Scouts. And I said, my great-grandchildren, now they don't know how to start a fire. They wouldn't know how to do anything that they've ever had to do.
So some of the skills that I've heard about you doing, making apple butter.
Oh, God, yes, I made tons of apple butter. And I've done all that kind of...
Soap?
Soap's the things I've made all in the country. So I still got soap in the cellar. Because I made soap for schools to teach kids how to make soap in schools and how to do things and how to make funnel cakes and how to do this.
Candle making, I heard too.
Huh?
Candle making.
Oh, not so much that as I did the soap.
That was more, okay.
That just most the soap, but I used to do, and what I did at schools too was I had one of them. The things was old tools. I took all the old tools over and identified what you did with this. This was butchering stools. This was this and that. See, my dad was a blacksmith, and we shoot horses. I don't have any horses. So I know how to do that. So I was only 4 years old, but I had to do the forge. You had to keep turning the handle to make the thing to get the horseshoes hot and to fit them on.
So you've had a job on the farm since you can remember.
Yeah, since ever since I can remember.
So tell me about, you also are an artist.
Oh, well, I got a little bit, not a good one, but I have sold some. That I had a
You
shop.
painted on shells?
Yeah, I got to show you the shells here. And
Saw blades?
huh?
Saw blades?
Oh yeah, I saw blades and.
What are your favorite things to paint?
Well, I'll tell you, if you want to get off your rump and walk out and look at the top of the thing out there, you can look at a whole pile of the seashells and see what you think of them. And then I would do wood burnings. Now I brought my wood burnings in, what I have left of them, and I have all barns on my things out in the kitchen. If you look up, there's a whole thing of barns and old time living spring houses and things like that. It's all wood burnings. But I brought some in to show you.
Oh, we'll capture some of that here. So, Norma, out of all these things that we've talked about, what are some of your favorite memories?
Oh, I got a lot of them. I got any particular favorite ones. I don't know. I have so many of them that.
What really made your heart sing all these years with all of these people
Well,
you've worked with?
I had multiple things going at all the same time, so I can't tell you which one was which, because I'm doing a painting on one day, and I'm doing a wood burning on another day, and I'm sewing a costume on another day, and taking care of animals in between times, and fighting with the kids, because I have a lovely family. I only had 2 boys, so I never got an Al one a girl, but we never were blessed with a girl, because I had girls coming out my rear end. I have all my nieces and my nephews, and they all come and take care of me. Now, this is the first Christmas in my life I spent by myself because of the dang virus. I always had like 50 people in here for Christmas, and Christmas time, everybody came. Both Al's family and my family. It was nothing to have 50 people in this house for Christmas Eve, and Christmas dinner, and all that kind of stuff. And Thanksgiving, I've had 30 people for Thanksgiving dinner.
And that is a legacy. Those are your children and
My
grandchildren
nieces
and nephews.
My nieces and my nephews. And I just have the whole family, all Al's family and mine. They just, come on, we're going to do this thing. So it never was a big problem. Everybody chipped in, and everybody brought something, and away we went. And I can remember when the kids was little, and they was too little, but I remember my problem was getting 30 places to sit. Where am I going to sit all these people? But we managed. We managed to get all that
do
done.
you remember how we met?
Not really.
Do you remember trying to help me in the DAR?
Yeah, I remember that.
And
Yeah,
you kept inviting me to meetings,
Yeah.
and we just could not find that gap patriot between the Revolutionary War
Yeah.
and the Civil War.
Yeah.
We couldn't get them documented.
So,
And then I got cancer,
uh-huh.
and you've had cancer,
5 times. I still got it. I can't get rid of it.
and you just keep on fighting.
Oh, I've had it 5 times. What the heck are you going to do to me now? I'm 90-some years old. And I just told them the other day on this virus, now you take my shot and give it to somebody young, because I'm old enough to die from the dang stuff anyhow. So don't put a bit. Then the doctor called and said, get your rump over there. And I said, and if I get sick, you're going to be made miserable. I'm going to make you miserable if I get sick, but I didn't get sick. So,
Well, then you and I got back together again, and you had my application and all my documents almost done, and they were at Alita's house. Do you remember calling me on the phone and telling me your whole application is burning?
Oh, God, yes, that's the fire she had down there, yeah.
And I could hear the firemen running in and out the front door.
Yeah.
And you're on the phone calling me saying, I hope you have copies.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Norma, I think you have more important things to do. We'll take care of this later.
I said like 40 people I think I've put in the DAR over the years, because I've put about 30 years I was a registrar.
Well, in honor of all of those people and of myself, I am honored to recommend you for a Woman of American History Award.
Well, I didn't do nothing that anybody else wouldn't have done. And they have wonderful girls in there now. It's really, really, they got computers, and they don't have to hand do things and run around and lift it up and go to the library and pick things up, or go to the courthouse and find things, because all they go.
It isn't just all the people you got in the DAR, but I think you've lived and you've breathed history
Oh,
your
yeah.
whole life.
Yeah, it was always my favorite subject in school was history, and so I always paid attention to the history student in school. And since my family has been here so long, and trying to keep it all together and not wanting to have it nothing
Particular.
I'm just glad I had a good family, and they've stuck with me through thick and thin. And when one of us is sick, the other one's there taking care of it. Like right now, I take care of my niece up there who's had strokes, and I take care of the other one over there who's had heart. She's on a constant monitor. She's to the hospital and monitoring constant oxygen. And he said, he takes care of himself, but he's had 5 bypasses and a valve put in his heart. And they're all getting in to be 80 years old, and I'm still running around taking care of all this.
At 91.
Yeah.
So, look into the camera and give advice. 91 years of life. If you look into that camera and the people that are out
There's
there
only
watching.
one thing I can say. Never give up. That's the end of it. Don't pay no attention to what happened past. Just keep on going, plowing ahead before. Put your head in gear and go that way.
Go ahead, Norma. Tell them why you're so proud of this.
I'm very proud of that because that is the history of 200 years on the family, and it's never been sold, and it's never been allowed for strangers on it. It's still all family, and I'm proud that the state has made it a historical monument.
It says, the House of Representatives citation, whereas members of the Howe family are being honored June 1st, 1996, upon the 200th anniversary of their ownership of Leyden Farm, and whereas Colonel Philip Howe, a Revolutionary War soldier, purchased Leyden Farm on June 3rd, 1796, part of the farm remains in the Howe family, and today many of the descendants are still living on the property. And whereas there will be a marking of the grave of Colonel Howe and 2 of his great-great-great-granddaughters by the Queen Aliquippa Chapter NSDAR Round Hill Cemetery, there will also be a dedication of the monument of the farm.
Mm-hmm. The AR did the part up at the cemetery, and they had their whole group, and Ruth Richards took an organ and played a whole thing up there, and marked several of the graves up there that was part of the Howe family.
This must have been a wonderful celebration. I can
it
see
was.
why you're so proud.
It wasn't just herself. We had to involve the state and everybody else to get it done, to get it all done, because they just don't do that.
And now we're over 220 years.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess it is.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Norma.
So, but I thought the DAR was part of this. So, I wanted you guys to get the thing because they were very helpful. Because the people who did all this, I think, are all dead. I think every one of them's dead now. They was just very, very helpful, and they came over, and I had people come here from the state, and the township was thinking, they'd come over in a hurry. If they saw what this was going on, they better get their rump over here, they're going to be left out. And so they came over, and they did all the politicians from around the township and the county and the state all had representatives here, people who came and represented the things for this thing, and it was a big. I have a whole movie of it.
I understand why you're very proud of it.
But
congratulations on.
But I thought this is not only for me; it's for posterity, that they will know this what's happened in this, that because nowadays people come and go, they don't know what the property was, who owned it, what was happening there.
And there it is, Norma and the historian thinking of the future.
Future that I figured that the kids got to know where they came from. Now I think this is a problem now that all this thing is, these kids are coming across the border. I feel so sorry for them. They don't have any family. They don't have anybody. They're rolling under the fences. They don't even know who they are, who their grandparents is, what country they came from, or nothing else. And them ones that they took and threw them over the fence down there, you seen that on TV? I thought that was the most horrible thing I ever seen, to take kids and throw them over a fence. Pull their arms out of socket to drop them that far. And then that little boy the other day, that his whole family went off and left him in the desert. Did you see that on TV?
No.
About 8 or 10 years old, little boy, and they found him out there in the desert, all by himself. Where's your family? Oh, they went off and left me. And I thought,
Well, we have one more little task that we have to do.
uh-huh.
You want to look at the camera and you want to say, we want to say who we are and how we're connected, okay?
Okay.
I'm Sharon Walhausen, Regent of Queen Aliquippa Chapter, here to honor Norma Corinne Wolfe Werner for the Woman of American History Award. Today we're honored to talk to you, Norma.
Well, I'm just honored to think you even think of me. That's something I would have never thought of. It was just something I do all the time, so I didn't think nothing about it.
Your everyday life is very special, Norma, and you've touched a lot of people. So thank you so much for letting us do this.
I thank you for the DAR. That's something I was going to do because I felt I had to. If I wasn't a member of the DAR, this would mean nothing. That would mean nothing because I'm registered now that this is something that's true.
Over 200 years living on the property of your patriot ancestor, and his name was?
Colonel Philip Howe. Philip Llewellyn. That Llewellyns come down through the family.
From Wales.
From Wales.
Can you explain something to me? So Llewellyn Howell is on the warrant in 1799. Is he the son of Philip or the father of Philip, Colonel Philip Howell?
No, he is the one person because he didn't get that. So he was a private in the war of Revolutionary War, but he fought in the War of 1812, and that's where he got his commission.
As a colonel.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Philip Howell.
Yeah, that's Philip Howe. Philip Llewellyn Howe is the same person.
I see.
Same person, but he was in 2 wars.
I see. Okay, that makes sense now. Thank you.
And I think I have had a family member in every war except the Texas War. We didn't have no reason to be fighting Texas because it was being annexed. They was fighting Spain.
1850s.
Yeah,
You didn't have anybody in the Mexican-American War.
Yeah. But
a veteran of every
war, and I got up to the Spanish-American War, and I thought, well, that's a pretty good because I had a general, and he was also a general in World War One.
Oh, okay.
And now in World War II they had a ship named after him. So, so one of the things. So, I didn't know anything about him until finally I got into searching things, and I got a picture of him here riding a horse and the things that. I didn't know that. I found out that one of those ships that they had during World War II, not the big ones, but the
small PT, the smaller PT, or
no, bigger
larger?
than that. The Victory, like the Victory ships they had, was named after him. One of them was named after him.
A part of Norma preserving history for the future is her artistry. She paints and she does wood burning, and so these are examples of some of her wood burnings.
There's an Indian.
That's beautiful, Norma.
I have these all over the countryside. And this was off of an old calendar. That's an old picture of a calendar. I took that picture off of. And this is windmills, and this is just a scene, country scene. And this is another one. I took these out of an old 18-something book. So it was in the book.
You do a lot with both the clothing and fashion and natural scenes. Those are beautiful.
And then I had to do the one for Jesus. Then I did a big one, though better than that, was they had a church they hung it up the church.
Oh,
then.
at the
And I
Round
did
Hill
that.
Presbyterian.
Yeah, because the preacher gave me that picture, and he said he wanted to know if I'd do that. So this was my practice one, and then I did one for up there.
Those are beautiful. So right here beside us, we have something that we wanted to talk to you about, and you called it. It's an interesting word, a route.
Route, that's what they called it. I learned about these from another historical society. I went to one at their house and I thought, oh, we could do one of them too. But I didn't have the recipes that they had. And so I had to do all that stuff and look up all the old stuff. I had old time cookbooks here and everything, the stuff that we made out of there. And then they cooked them down in our cellar. What I didn't get made was funny. It's a funny story about it. I had a batch of ladies down in the cellar cooking, and Al goes and puts a recording of it on the stair steps, and he turns this on, so you hear a batch of women. That was a dirty trick.
Well, it sounds like you and Al had a lot of fun together.
Oh, we did.
I'm looking for one. Oh, there we go. A picture of the table with all the fine dishes and all of the foods, colonial foods.
Everything had to be nice. It had to be really great. You had your best dishes, your best pottery, your best of everything. And
so what is a route exactly? It's a colonial...
It's a colonial food.
Food.
Colonial food. And,
how interesting.
But it was so funny about that one. When they got all done, I had a lot of juice left over from this, that, and the other thing. And they had used everything I had in the house was gone, except my mixing bowl. And so I thought, I'm not going to throw all that away. So I put Jell-O in that, and I made a real pretty thing like it. And I had one a pedestal thing, so I put that on it, and I fixed that all up and took it up there. And everybody just thought that was the greatest thing. And the guy said to me, second time I had it happen, I'll pay you for the recipe. I couldn't tell him what was in that at all because it was everything I dumped together.
There you go. That's sustainable Norma, using everything.
Everything of it
has to be used.
Throw all that out. I have one dish left. All my dishes was gone up there.
So here's another story that you've told us. This is you at your monument at the end of your road.
Yeah, this is when they're putting the time capsule in. I was just looking at that yesterday. That's been done in 2050. That's doing the time capsule, and that's Janice and me and
so this was the follow up to that the book you wrote.
Well, that's the follow up to the book and the putting the thing up
and putting the monument up. And these are
those are the people who came
from all across the country to celebrate.
All across the country. So,
and
that was really something.
And I'm going to bring up this wonderful book that you wrote.
So my family from Wyoming came in here, and this.
If I have the muscle to lift it. If I have the muscle to lift this wonderful book you wrote.
That's the biggie that we got done. And I was very proud because this book, neither one of us had ever done a book. This was our first one, and so we did didn't know how to even start. And this is what it started out with.
So who is Rusid
Publishing?
Who is that?
That's the publishing company that we went through to get some of this stuff published in it. We sold 100 and some of these books.
And it includes family history, photos.
Yeah.
I assume if I leaf through here, I'm going to find some of those family members we've been talking about.
Yeah, and there's, I think on toward the back of them, I think each one of them has a family section in here. Well, they may be in there. I don't know where it is in here now.
And all 500 pages.
Yeah, but each family, when I put it together, when I put a person, we ran his whole family down to the end before we started another person. So you never had to look through, this one's here, then he's got kids over here, he's got somebody over here. The whole family, from that family on down till it ended, till they ended with the book. And then we started the next one.
I see.
So that they could find it.
Now, Leiden
Leiden
Farm.
Farm was the name of this place.
Who named it Leiden Farm?
I have no idea. That was what he bought when he bought it, was Leiden Farm.
Interesting. So that just got handed down.
Yes, got handed down. So,
All right. One of the other things we talked about a little while ago was the Bicentennial that you worked with the committee.
Yeah.
And this is a picture of the wagon train.
Mm-hmm. So Al went on the wagon train. Went with them.
How
I
far
went,
did-
I
and-
went part of a day.
And
but
those were some of your cousins too.
oh yeah,
on that.
Yeah, there was a batch of us.
So I'm going to hold this up.
So,
And you have a story to go with walking across the Boston Bridge.
That was the beginning of when they were leaving here. They had been up here 2 weeks, and then they were leaving, and they was going to head east. Well, we had to cross Boston Bridge to do that. When they got down there, they were scared to death, and so I took the horse, and I went with her because she knew me, and she knew there was Herb on there. That she knew me, and I put her up there. Come on, lady, you and I are going to walk across here. Well, once we did that, and the rest of the horses saw that this was okay, then we got the whole damn wagon train to go across there.
And that's you leading lady across the bridge.
Yeah. She was a little lady. She had a cold out here one day, and that was something else again.
Well, I
And
understand.
Janice and I, we're always into trouble. I mean, she had this cold, and she had a mess. She wasn't progressing. The afterbirth wasn't coming right. So come on down here and see what you can do. So we got the vet, and we had to put a twitch in her nose to hold her so he could reach his arm in there and get that thing out of there. So we finally got her, and then she died. What the heck she died of? But anyhow, Janice and I went down and Earl. We skinned her, and he made a beautiful robe out of her. He's got it down there yet. It's a beautiful robe. But we buried her in the backyard down there. And
Wow, you just have done so many interesting things, Norma. This represents something that you're very passionate about also, and that was fabrics
yeah,
and sewing
yeah,
and wardrobes.
yeah. And this was a grand thing, and I have a girl who wants to do some baby dolls, and I said, well, I got all the patterns, because here's how you do it. You can make any size you want out of these things. I think this has got one of them. I'm not sure this has got one in. I'm sure one of them is.
So you can take any pattern and you can even make it in a baby doll size.
You can make a baby doll size, and where this is the. But there's a graft in there that you here like this. So you come here, okay. They give you these on a graft. Now you could make that up and down any size you want it. Any size that you want that to be. You can leave it small for a baby doll, or you can make it up, make your squares bigger, or whatever you want it
So
to
you
do.
cut it out into paper, and then you cut it out into fabric.
Yeah, and then you got it out. You get it to whatever size fits you, and then you can cut it out in your fabric and just sew it up.
We saw some photos of
Yeah.
some of the costumes that you
Yeah,
made
yeah.
for some of these festivals and celebrations.
Yeah,
You actually clothed some of the people in the Bicentennial.
yeah. We did a lot of things in the Bicentennial. That was a great time.
And Debbie also said that one of the things that was so important with your knowledge of fabrics is that you were able to mend
Yeah.
a lot of the things that you
That's
located.
why I was not a little skittish about letting some people touch things, because they didn't know what they was They didn't know what they was doing. And I said, no.
You were particular
I
about
was
your
particular.
you don't even call them costumes, wardrobe.
They wardrobe, yeah.
Wardrobe.
It's,
Yeah.
uh,
So this last thing that I pulled out some of from your photos here, this was from the Lewis and Clark
Right.
Discovery
Yeah.
Expedition.
Now, the one that I was really proud of in here is Let's see where the heck this is at. Now, this is the skillet that they gave me.
They gave you a skillet.
Yeah, they gave me a skillet. It has Lewis and Clark in it. I think it's hanging on this.
And we're looking at a cake that you made.
Yeah, it's a cake.
You even made the cake for the celebration.
Where in the heck did I had this on here?
In this picture, we have Norma right here greeting the.
No, that's the one.
From
That
the
one
keel
there.
boat.
Yeah, that's the guy. My Lewis and Clark. You know, they come back up here to see me later on. About a year or so later, they
Did
come
they
back,
really?
Yeah, come back up. Yeah,
You're making history and making friends.
I made friends with him. He was this is they were very very good to me. And one of the guys, he got a sort of heartthrob of one of the people's daughters, and he was back up here quite a bit.
Uh-huh. How about that?
Yeah.
We're making another kind of history in Elizabeth.
This one here, we spent night after night after night. And my friend, he was a college professor, a really great artist too, and he wouldn't let nobody else but me and his wife come in, and we put all this together because he wouldn't let nobody else. If anybody else comes around, I quit. And we couldn't afford to have him quit because he was the one who knew how to do things. So she and I would work down there. One night, it was really funny. He goes up, and it was kind of cold. And they had a little fire in the thing, a little coal fire downstairs, and we was upstairs. So he goes on up, and he goes think. We come out, he had locked the door from the outside. And so here we are, it's midnight, and we're locked in. So we had to move a great big pile of tires and take the hinges off the door and open up the door because it was locked on the other side. And she squeezed out of there. She didn't put a coat on so she could go out and unlock the door from the outside. We go upstairs and he says, well, where have you been? And I thought she's going to kill him.
And that was all the adventures of writing this book.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
Writing the book.
So this book, what are the contents of Between Two Rivers? What is that
about?
about?
It's the whole history of Elizabeth Township. But she and I put all, he did all the artwork is in there. He did. He was a very good artist. That's what he taught in school. He taught over at community college.
And there's a lot of photos too.
Oh, the photos most of that she and I took. And these are some of the girls. This is my cousin here, and these are the ladies who worked with us. And this is Ron's wife there. And we had all these things that we got down there for the kids. And this was my grandfather's furniture that my aunt had.
Wow.
And here's my sister. And she come down, but they set up, and we had Boston School down there, and we had rooms set up all through it, different rooms or different things. And you could come in and view the whole dang thing and go upstairs, and you could see what a bedroom looked like, what a kitchen looked like.
From your grandfather's furniture.
So yeah, some of this down for the furniture and some of that. And
This book you didn't write.
No.
But this is the activity that you participated in
Yeah,
that
it's just
started a
been
lot of
just
the Elizabeth
things that-
Historical Society
Well, like
activity.
got it out here, stole it off of Elizabeth, off of Pittsburgh, and got it out here. I don't know if there's any pictures in here about that or not. There might be some in mine over there. I don't think there's any pictures in here about that.
This shows the
this
wagon train
is
pathway.
Now this is why I got Ed to do this. And I got him clothes and everything to get him to do that.
Oh, that was when he did the Lewis and Clark.
Yeah.
Yeah, he told that story about
Yeah.
how he was inspired by you.
Yeah, I got him clothes and fixed up and said that he could go and do that thing. And so he was just the perfect one to go along with it. And he was a very shy young man when he came to down there. So I would push him into a lot of things.
And he calls it inspire. You call it push. He calls it inspire. So as we sit here, we're sitting right underneath photos of some of your family.
Yeah, this is my grandparents and my great-grandparents.
And how you continue to honor the family history.
Well, they had two aunts, but these came when she died. Then I inherited these, and everybody was, "How's come you inherited?" And that one over there, my sister-in-law threw out. That thing, that's my mother-in-law when she was 15.
A Werner.
Yeah, and that was thrown out. It was up in the attic, and she threw it away. And I gathered that up, and I come home and I painted it. Well, after I painted it, oh, I'd like to have that back. I said, too late. So for Christmas this year, David took and had her one made.
Oh.
So that she could have, she thought that was a worthless piece until I painted it. And after I got done painting it, she said, that looked like pretty good. That's Mom when she was about 16 years old.
Beautiful.
So,
Thank you for everything you've done for us today.
Well, I thank you for coming here and even being interested in all the messes that I've done over a lifetime. But you know, I just hate to see the young kids now, even my great-grandchildren, they don't show no interest because, well, in the first place, they can't get down here. And I wanted to teach them the wood burning and to teach them the painting and the things and,
Yes.
and the different kind of paintings. I think I showed you my other paintings in the
On
other
the shelves.
Yeah,
Mhm.
in the room in there. There's my first one was just about the age of her. The one that's in the bathroom, I did that when I was in 8th grade.
Mm.
That one of the little girl's face, and my mother bought me these sets of pastels. And
that's what got you started.
Yeah, she showed me then how to start things, and that little things that's in there. That was my very first one. It was from a Christmas card, and I looked at that, and she said, "Well, now you got it, kid, because you made the water down and the town up, the things up, so it looks like it's down." She said, "Now that's pretty good for your first try."
So she encouraged you, and you kept on going.
But she was pretty good, pretty good. She was a very talented lady. And
Well, I know that you probably have no idea the people that you've inspired over all the years of teaching. Yeah, going into the schools.
Oh, I had fun with the kids in school. I used to have fun, and I'd make them all sit on the floor, and then we'd make soap, and we'd all get soap. Then I'd give them all the little pieces of soap, not know what I made, but what I had made, because you're gonna let it sit, because it can be, you know, a little bit of lye in there. So, but they learned all how to do that. They learned, I did so many things in school. One day I went over there, and I had nothing. I said, "Look out the window, and what do you see?" Telephone pole. Nothing. And I said, "Now, if you was coming here, what do you think you would have seen if you'd have been in this place? It was all trees. You had to build your way. You had to chop your way into here." And this one little kid, and I interact back and forth with the kids. I don't just talk to them. I ask them questions and make them answer too. And so this one little kid, he answered. I said, "How'd you learn all this stuff?" He said, "My dad told me." I said, "Who's your dad?" Well, he told me. I said, "Oh, it ain't any wonder." And no wonder his dad was wonderful. He had a whole batch of kids, but boy, he kept them under, and he made them work, and he made them, taught them everything. And his kid knew all this stuff. And I said, "Oh, okay, now I understand how it's coming. You know all this kind of stuff." That he does pretty good. But I made funnel cakes and an electric skillet, and made them mix the batter and do it themselves.
And the favorite part was the eating.
Oh, they got to eat. They had to make it, and they had to eat it. And those kids just had. And one little boy said to me, "Could I have another one?" I said, "Well, yes, you can. I can make you another, but you got to promise me something." He says, "What's that?" I said, "You'll make LAs."
What did he have to make?
A's.
All A's. Well, that's the way to get a kid working. Funnel cakes.
Make A's. So I said, "No." I thought he was going to cry. I said, "No, I'll make you one." I can't make all A's.
Thank you so much, Norma.